Good morning and welcome to today's video. So I've been riding for about a decade, and despite riding this long, there were some bad cycling habits I used to fall into and still slip into now. So today I want to talk through some of these habits and explain to you why they're bad.
So nice to see a blue sky because it's been cloud cover for so many mornings in a row. Literally last week, haven't seen the sun. Today's workout is an anaerobic power session. So 2 3-minute efforts, 3 2-minute efforts, 4 1-minute efforts, all trying to make them way above threshold with good recovery in between.
Half wheeling. Bad habit number 1, half wheeling. If you don't know what half wheeling is, it generally happens when two riders are riding two abreast and one person, their wheel is just creeping forward. So they're just edging forward all the time, and then puts the other person in a really uncomfortable situation where they're always like trying to catch up to this other rider. And just don't do it. It's such bad etiquette. If you're a new rider, you probably don't know this, but there's only one reason to half wheel, and that is when you're doing it on purpose. It is an excellent way to psych someone else out when someone else is on the rivet and you're just creeping the gas. You're just giving it a little bit more gas, and the other person is just, they're suffering. So you're just there having a great time. But generally, it's always the other guy that sets the pace, and that's the rule of thumb. Or you just lapse in concentration. Sometimes you're having a good day, your legs are feeling fresh, but you don't realize the other person is next to you is suffering as much, and you're just doing it inadvertently, and you're pissing the other guy off without even knowing. Generally, the times that you can fall into the bad habit of half wheeling are when you're sick of the talking. You've had enough, so you just lift the pace to where there is no more talking. 2, you're riding with a rider of a higher stature, maybe a pro or semi-pro, and you're thinking, I'm just going to give this a bit of a nudge. And so you're giving it a nudge because you want to see what they got and test yourself as well, but they don't really match. So it just becomes this annoying give and take where the other guy might say something and you're like, what are you doing? Where you just end up pissing them off, and you end up maybe with a bad reputation of the bunch for being a half wheeler. I don't know, but it's not ideal. Or you slip into complacency. Hey, we all make mistakes, we all forget. You may be having a good day while the other person next to you is just suffering. You may be way fitter than the person that you're riding with, and inadvertently you just start creeping forward without even realizing. It's just something to keep an eye out on so you don't become that rider in the bunch. Oh, how good is stretching? Holding the wheel. As you probably already know, in cycling, there is a huge advantage to drafting another rider. It's probably like 25-30% depending on how far away you are from that other rider. So while we're on the topic of bunch skills, holding the wheel is really important, and it can be a really bad habit if you don't do it right. So if you're too far behind that other rider, then what you're going to do is you're going to mess up where everyone sits in the bunch. So if you've got a bunch of riders and they're all two abreast, then if you're not holding the wheel correctly, you're shifting everyone in one direction or another, which is just mega annoying, especially when you're riding long distances. It just pisses everybody off. All you can think about is, why isn't that person riding close enough to the rider in front? Does not make sense. Or alternatively, if you're way too close to the rider in front of you to the point where you're overlapping wheels, that is just downright dangerous and stupid. When you're overlapping wheels like that, the amount of aero benefit that you probably get is negligible to being the correct distance behind the rider. All it takes is one small lapse in concentration, and the rider in front will tap the brakes or swerve a little bit to the left, and you're basically a goner. Once that front wheel crosses over with the front wheel of the rider behind, it's probably going to end up in people bodies hitting the deck and people going down. So what is the correct distance to ride behind another rider in a bunch? Well, it's probably around 50 centimeters, but I'd say the best guess is to judge it by how everyone else is riding in the bunch. If it's a more conservative bunch and people leave larger gaps, then ride like the other people ride. It will ensure that the bunch is uniform and riding two abreast correctly with the correct spacing between all the riders. How's this? I've probably chosen the most echoey room in the house, the kitchen. There's sound bouncing off all the walls. Riding in the gutter. I see this a lot. I don't fall into this habit too often because I feel very vulnerable and unsafe when I'm riding that close to the curb or the gutter. And I think people do it because they don't want to piss the drivers off. So they ride so far to the left that they're basically in the gutter as to allow drivers to overtake. But I find this really unsafe, and this may be by riding in the gutter, you're inviting cars to overtake you with a really close pass to the point where their mirror might even tap you, or just, you do not want that. That just seems really unsafe. In every scenario, the big metal box that is passing you is going to win in comparison to flesh and bones. So to avoid this unsafe situation, if you ride a little bit into the lane, not overly to the point where you're in the middle of the lane, but just over to the left, but not in the gutter, on the left because we ride in Australia, then you're forcing cars to actively overtake you, to actually acknowledge there is a rider there, and they will hopefully look for a safe scenario to overtake. That is why I think riding in the gutter is unsafe. The only time I can think of right now where riding in the gutter is permissible would be if it's a really, really, really narrow road and that is the only place to ride and cars are passing you, or you're going so exceptionally slow, like you've got a flat tire or something and there's no other option. Yes, we're filming in the pantry because it's basically my favorite room in the house. It's where the alcohol is kept, it's where the food's kept. I love it. Seen this one before? This is the next bad habit. Waving people through. And this is a questionable one because I see so many people do it. I do it myself, I think on a weekly basis. So this is more of something to watch out for. If you're waving cars through, you're basically, in a sense, in my mind, almost assuming some sort of liability. You're almost instructing that car to pass you. Now, what happens if you do not do this correctly and it's a blind corner and a car is passing, but then there's another car coming in the opposite direction and they swerve to the left and they swipe you? Now, that's a horrible scenario, but it's a very realistic scenario that could happen, especially on the roads that we ride on. So waving people through can be seen as a bad habit that you should use at your own discretion because anything could happen. Let's leave it there for today. I'm sure there's so many more bad habits I could go into. They're like the easiest thing to come up with. They're flooding into my head as we make this video right now. If you've got a mate or somebody who has a really bad cycling habit, let me know in the comments below. I am just genuinely curious at what pisses you off. Talk to you guys tomorrow.